Welcome to Horizons of Thought. Today I'm going to talk to you about the short squeeze of GameStop. To explain all of that sentence, I'm going to begin by talking to you about stocks. Stocks are basically partial ownership of a company. They basically represent the capital and the valuation of a company. And companies can sell part or all of their valuations on a publicly traded market. And you can buy into these things by signing up for a brokerage firm or using an internet-based platform that allows you to trade in stocks. So you can buy, sell, and trade stocks. And normally what you would do if you're going to buy, sell, and trade stocks like this, if you want to make any money, is you're going to buy a stock when it has a low value and you're going to sell it when it has a higher value, and the difference is going to be the profit you make, and that's how you make money off of the changing values of companies over time. An interesting thing you can do, though, is shorting a stock. That's where you borrow a stock from somebody with an agreement to give them that stock back in a month or 2 or 3. And you borrow the money, the stock, you sell it while it's high, and then you go and buy it back while it's low and return the value back to the person that you borrowed it from at the appointed time. The idea behind that is if you think a stock is valued too high, you can make money off of the decrease of the value of the stock instead of the increase of the value of the stock. Now, short selling itself is not necessarily bad. There is an amazing movie that talks about the 2008 financial crisis that hit the United States and the world that was basically based on overvaluation of housing in the United States. That overvaluation happened because mortgage-backed securities were hiding low-value mortgages inside higher-value mortgages and lying to the customers who were buying these things. That particular behavior went on and encouraged banks to loan money to people who could not bear the mortgages under the assumption that housing prices would just continue to go up and up and up. And there were some people who realized what was going on well before the rest of the world did and had the financial wherewithal to do something about it. I have to admit, I actually saw this coming back in 2003 and told a lot of rich people that it was coming, but they did not believe me. It would be another 5 years before it fell, so understandable. It wasn't such an easy thing to see. I did not have any kind of money at all, so I had no ability to deal with this. But there were rich people who did. And what they did is they started shorting the housing market. It was a very difficult thing to do at the time. They had to essentially buy insurance against the fall of the housing market, which they did. But to buy that insurance, they had to create it. Now, one of the weird things about insurance is you can buy insurance for anything if somebody will sell it to you. So they worked with people to actually create that insurance. And it was a kind of shorting of the market under the assumption that housing prices would fall because they had observed this fraud that nobody was paying attention to. You can watch a movie called The Big Short and learn all about that. So, not like the people in that movie were heroic or great or wonderful people, but they certainly were the protagonists in the movie. They're not the villains. They at least noticed what was going on, and they did, in their own way, try to communicate to the world that housing prices were too high, and they tried to make sure that people understood this, in part through the action of getting other investors into their short. Really great movie. Enjoy it. Having said that, short selling has often been used for incredible evil. Like a generation ago, when currency speculators put an awful lot of work in speculating on weak currencies, dropping their values, and often ruining the economies of entire third world countries for months or years on end, causing untold suffering, we have seen short sellers today in large hedge funds engage in behavior that also ruins many lives. And I will explain by explaining the case of GameStop in the United States. GameStop is an interesting company. They basically help you buy, sell, trade, and swap used video games. It's one of the few places left that does this. EB Games does this as well. But it's not so easy to do unless you go onto eBay or other things like this. This gives you a centralized location. And so the company has some value, but not a lot. There were some hedge fund people who saw this publicly traded stock, saw the value, and thought, it's higher than it should be. This company is overvalued, and so we're going to short the company. But they realized in their greed that they had enough economic power to short so many of the stocks in this company that they could effectively bankrupt it, completely ending the company GameStop. This would cost 14,000 people who work at GameStop their jobs. Just gone, jobs gone. And the reason why these hedge fund companies would do this is because if you borrow a stock that has no value, you go, oh, here's your $0 back. It's an amazing way to make money if you have zero morals whatsoever. And so a bunch of people on an internet forum called Reddit, who were little local traders of stock back and forth, sometimes did inappropriate banter, sometimes had conversations about stock, the kinds of things that people who trade in stocks typically have done for the last 100 years, caught wind of this and they thought this is a little too evil for their taste. So they're going to squeeze the short position. That's the short squeeze part of my first sentence. How that works is they got all the people who were paying attention on their forum together to buy GameStop. And what they did when they bought this is every time they buy, the stock goes up in value because there's less of it to buy, so you got to pay more for it. So they got a whole bunch of people together and they started buying this stock. And this stock went from the incredibly low value of, I think, $10 all the way up to $500 a share. Way over the valuation of the stock. Nobody cared what the company was worth anymore. They just kept on buying it and increasing the price super, super high. And that's to really punish the short sellers in the hedge funds, because those people would then have to go back and buy the stock at the higher price when their shorts came due. This caused quite a few hedge funds to lose quite a lot of money. And there have even been bailouts on this. And you know what? Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people, in my view. These people were trying to ruin 14,000 people's lives in order to make a buck, to make money that they didn't need. They already have more than they can spend. And a bunch of ordinary retail traders on Reddit decided to do something about it. Look, retail trade is already behind the eight ball. You know less than the big companies. You trade at different hours than them. You often don't get information on the prices of stock until 15 minutes after they get it. So you're at a big disadvantage already. What ended up happening was absolutely insane at that point. These trading portfolios, the electronic ones that many of the traders were using, like Robinhood, they are essentially owned by the same hedge funds in some cases, or related hedge funds to the ones that were profiting off of the short of GameStop and were now losing money off of the short squeeze of GameStop. So recently, they tried to collude to prevent the retail traders from buying GameStop, just allowing them to sell it for the purposes of trying to drive down the price and prevent the price from going up so that they wouldn't lose quite as much money. This is an unbelievable act of corruption, even by the corrupt world we live in today. I want you to think about that. You buy the right to buy, sell, and trade stock on a platform that is not supposed to be manipulating your behavior. And you have an agreement that you are not going to engage in insider trading in order to manipulate the stock. You're engaging in a perfectly legal action to increase the price of the stock in an ordinary way. Yes, with a bunch of people communicating on the internet, but publicly and openly. No insider trading, no private action going on here, no secrets. It's upfront what you're doing. Perfectly legal. And now the companies that you rely on to your trades are stopping you from doing this because they're not there to allow you to make a profit. They're there to help their rich hedge fund owners make a profit at your expense. Understandably, a lot of people are really angry about what's going on in relation to the GameStop stock short squeeze. And they're across the political spectrum. We're talking everybody from AOC to Donald Trump Jr. have weighed in on the evils of this. And I want you to think about that, because there have been incredible efforts to silence this. There were accusations that the initial Reddit forums were racist, and there was even an attempt to shut them down for a while, which didn't last very long, especially the Discord server. There have been efforts to say that this is disruptive to the stock market in a completely inappropriate way. So they're trying to, quote, restabilize it by preventing people from buying this stock. There have been all sorts of shenanigans going on before they finally just literally prevented huge swaths of the public from even buying the stock at all so that they could just recuperate their funds. And yeah, forget it. Who cares about these, miserable retail investors? They're just poor scum. They don't matter. And yeah, you want something to be unified about? That's a thing to be unified about. You want to think about what that says for the world. You want to be calling for justice. The people who prevented these trades, the people who played these manipulative games to manipulate your political beliefs and your views, they're not good people. And they certainly deserve to be investigated thoroughly. So it is my hope that the United States Congress will investigate the hedge funds and the trading companies that tried to collude to prevent the retail investors from being able to buy, sell, and trade in a reasonable and free manner. This is not my usual thing that I do on Horizons of Thought. Normally, I try to give a bunch of point of views and let people figure out for themselves what it is they believe, because that's something that is important to me. But the underlying reason why that's important to me is there are a lot of forces in the world today that are trying to manipulate you into being angry at each other rather than angry at large companies and wealthy hedge fund owners who are manipulating your emotions in order to make money and destabilize democracy. It is important that you argue with each other openly rather than just let your resentment seethe. It is important that you talk to each other about your different political beliefs, even if it's uncomfortable. And it is important that you recognize when there are very powerful forces arrayed against you that are publicly and openly acting against your best interest, so that you can stand up and say, no, I demand some justice. And this is one of those rare occasions where it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. Odds are you're with me on this one. So you can ask for and demand justice. And with that, this has been Horizons of Thought. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. If you did not like this video, hit the dislike button. Put in your comments, tell me what you think, and I'll do a follow-up if you've got a bunch of things to say that might adjust my thinking on this. With that, I hope you have a good day, and I will see you soon.